And we're off.
We're live?
We're live.
All right. Welcome. It is Monday, July 30th, the day after Ohio 70.3. It's 2018. It's 9:17 Eastern Standard Time. We are traveling back to Nashville from our race this weekend, and we thank you for joining us on the Crushing Iron Triathlon podcast.
I got to say, it's good to have you here.
Yeah, well, I hope so, since I'm driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to make note of that.
I know, man. You're building up huge C26 points.
Yeah, making the drive back after racing yesterday. I even drove home from the race, but actually that was a good sign.
It was a great sign.
It was a great sign. So
you even drove to dinner.
I did go to dinner.
Even though I said I was going to drive to dinner.
I know, it's true. All 0.2 miles to Mark the Miller's Tavern, where the service gets a 4 stars, the sirloin gets a negative 5 stars, and the carrot cake gets a 4 stars.
That's about right.
Yeah, that's about right. But yeah, we are on our road back to Nashville, returning from, we said, Ohio 70.3, and this will be a 2-part podcast. We will do a quick review of Ohio 70.3, and as we close, we'll share with you a little story that we will now affectionately call number 1308.
It's a good story, man.
It's a outstanding story. We hope you enjoy it. But yes, we obviously our last podcast, the last couple have been. We had Ken Hammond on a few weeks ago, the race director of Ohio 70.3. And he went down and gave a breakdown of the course and kind of all that you need to know. And it was great to get feedback from other athletes and listeners and that had listened to the podcast and went to the athlete meeting. And they said the podcast was basically the athlete meeting.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was great. And that's something that Mike and I are going to look into doing more interviews with different race directors, as I actually think it's quite helpful for both the race director and obviously the athlete to get to know more about the race and feel more prepared as they get there. And still suggest, sitting through the athlete meeting in case there's any last-minute updates, but you should feel more than prepared, which I find sometimes people just honestly don't read anything in the athlete guide, and they rely totally on Facebook groups for specific races for all their answers, which is, while that might seem like it's an okay thing to do, always go to the source. But yeah, we will... You want to start with the race review, accommodations review, or overall experience review?
Let's go in slow with the accommodations, man. I think we could start by just pulling into the Columbus area. I enjoyed it as a Big Ten fan. I, have a little bit of a bitter sword against the Ohio State University.
Yeah, I bet you do.
But I respect them, and it's always kind of cool to be in that vibe. So we stayed in North Columbus?
Yeah, we were just north of Columbus in what they call, I guess, the Polaris area. That was our exit. I think it was Gemini Parkway or Gemini Way or whatever, Polaris area. And
Gemini?
Yeah, it was like Gemini Boulevard was like the road. It's also my sign, Gemini.
You're just trying to throw that in there. It was Lyra?
Lyra Drive, was the actual. Well, the Gemini was like the Parkway was like the main drag right there.
Yeah.
But it was on Lyra, 9090 Lyra Drive. We stayed at the Staybridge Suites.
Highly recommend it.
Highly recommend the Staybridge Suites, and that exit is loaded. Every corporate chain you can possibly ever imagine was on that exit. If you listen to this podcast, you know that Mike has a strict limit of we either don't travel at all for meals from the hotel, or they must be either within walking distance or a 2-mile drive. And this exit hit all criteria. We had a Bonefish Grill Thursday night, one of my favorite restaurants. Friday night, we went to the server at Bonefish recommended we go to Marshals, which is a fantastic Italian restaurant we had there Friday night. And then the server we had Friday night recommended First Watch, which is a good breakfast joint. We had that Saturday morning for our big breakfast load, where the waitress talked smack to us about not being able to finish 3 pancakes, and we proved her wrong.
You did.
And let's see, what else? Oh, and then night before dinner, the Firebirds, which is probably my favorite restaurant currently, were kind enough to accommodate 30 of the C26 athlete family. We had reservations. They accommodated all 30 of us in just two separate tables. Great meal. And then last night we went down to Mike the Miller's Tavern. All within, like I said, a mile and a half. Everything you needed was there. It was definitely, I think, a great exit. The only 2 deductions I have at the state were from the Staybridge Suites. All in all, great experience. I'd give it 4.25 stars. I subtracted a 1/4 star for our toilet seat. It's so new that you can't actually put the seat up because it's still so rigid. Hadn't been greased enough, obviously, and so
We
we
obviously
actually
stayed in a room designed by a woman.
Yeah, we had to hold the seat up with our left, and then obviously take care of business with the right. And then that was only a 1/4 star deduction, and then I gave a 1/2 star total deduction for the 1:30 a.m. night before race fire alarm.
Yeah. That was not cool, man. That you have a hard time. I mean, even I, as a spectator this weekend, had a hard time falling asleep, and just finally, you fall asleep around 11, and at 1:30, I just thought it was wake up time, man. When I heard that thing, and I'm like, I hadn't heard your alarm all weekend, and I thought, man, his phone alarm is loud.
Yeah. It was very loud. I mean, there's no way you're sleeping through that. I mean, you hear it. It's 1:30. You doubt there's a fire because, unfortunately, we've kind of been trained that most fire alarms are jokes or accidents or tests. But you jump up at like 1:30, you get your adrenaline pumping, and there's like a, adrenaline dump, and it's hard to go back to sleep. And, Mike and I went ahead and took precautions in case it was a fire.
We did?
And tied our sheets together in case we needed to rappel down from the 4th floor, like you see,
it was funny
in the
because,
movies.
I said, what the heck was that, man? And you're like, it was a fire alarm going off. And I said, oh, and I rolled over. and then, and then I couldn't sleep for a few seconds or a minute or so. And I was like, wait a minute, I wonder if there was really a fire.
Yeah, but I checked. I looked outside, and everything looked, couldn't smell the
But some
smoke,
people did go outside,
But some
I heard.
people did, yeah. We had an athlete and his wife. They both went outside.
I thought for sure it was somebody in your age group trying to throw off your game.
Probably was.
Okay, so I'm in the same boat. You said 4.25 stars.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go down to 4 because I really, as I said, I wasn't racing. I went down for a bag of Doritos, normal size bag of
I knew that's where
Doritos.
you were going.
$4. I just didn't. I couldn't. But in a good way, I didn't do it because of principle. So I didn't eat Doritos. But
So they did you a favor.
4.5 stars.
Now we're talking.
But yeah, other than that, it was. I think as far as location goes, it's a good part of town for the race in Delaware. But still, it's far from my perfect criteria for racing.
I know. We all know what your perfect criteria is, and it's
quite
mine
a
too.
bit of a drive to.
It's
it wasn't that far, but still 15 minutes, right? To the race site.
From the hotel.
Yeah.
The race site. Let's see. It was between 20 and 30 to both race sites.
Oh,
or
there you go.
to T1 and T2. So, it was an easy drive. It was super easy the morning of. So, you knew what you were getting into. You can't have every race like a Chattanooga 70.3 where you have the opportunity to just park at your hotel downtown and then never get back into it until you're ready to leave. So, which is my favorite and earns a 5-star. But overall, plenty of accommodations. There was no way, pretty much anyway, to have that opportunity to just park your car and never get into it, just strictly because of the way that the race was set up. So you knew
Possibly an Airbnb downtown Delaware.
Yeah, but still, you're leaving a lot to chance.
If you're playing a little more Renaissance man type person.
Yeah,
you could try that.
Yeah, you're still playing it by chance. But yeah, overall great. Overall race event management, I also give 4.5 stars.
Pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there was a volunteer kind of crisis the week leading up to it, which I'm sure that happens probably more than we probably understand and realize. And sometimes you hear about it, sometimes you don't. I personally had no issues at all with any volunteers ever needing anything. I think if there really was that much of a need for more volunteers, I think they went largely unnoticed just because of the favorable weather.
That didn't hurt.
It definitely didn't hurt. I was never in need, and I actually mentioned this to the volunteer director, Buckner, who's a friend of the podcast, and I told him that I actually preferred having not 20 people handing out Gatorade and water at the bike aid stations, because sometimes I think there's just too many people, and it's spread out as the bike course was, with it only being one loop. I didn't have any issues, had no issues on the run, never was very well directed coming in and out of transition on where to go if you didn't know where to go. So I thought it was great. The bike course, I saw at least 4 course marshals where up towards, I think, kind of the pointy end where I was at for this race. I know I saw 4 specific, if not maybe one more than that, monitoring and hanging back and checking to make sure everybody was doing what they were supposed to do and riding legal distance. And I had no issues with traffic on the course. Every intersection was very well secured and with traffic guidance from police officers and or volunteers. And the run course, never had a time where I didn't know where to go. Minimal turns, never had a problem at check-in. I mean, like I said, from a race management standpoint and execution, I never found that I was the only kind of, if I'm being nitpicky, and this isn't a race management. It's the guy with the gun at the beginning, the start gun at the beginning of the swim. I was in like the first 50 people, and I never heard like a, hey, 3, 2, 1, fire. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and I think everybody in like the 10 to 15 person radius from where I was basically jumped out of their tri-suit and maybe had a little chamois cream spill. But it was, other than that, it was, I thought it was a very well done and executed race day.
Yeah, I mean, that's a shocker for sure. I thought you were going to talk about Radar Randy. What was his name?
Yeah, I can't put that on the race management. That goes,
no, but it's just an item of note to talk about in your next
that goes into my overall race experience. But
town meeting with Delaware officials.
Yeah, there was we check. You go to check your bike in, or you go to Delaware State Park on Saturday, and there's good old Radar Randy. I think his car said like Natural Resources Ranger or something on the side of his car, and there he was in the front of the park. He knew it'd be a banner day with so many people coming in that didn't really know where they were going and probably didn't know the speed limit, and there he is, being Radar Randy himself on probably his favorite day of the year, just ticketing people right and left for going for going probably like 5 miles over a speed limit. And he was dialed in and ready to rock. So he was. I mean,
it was a line of cars coming into a park.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible.
He's drop off your transition bags. And
he's probably got Chips playing on rerun in his house too.
Randy, you know what tomorrow is, don't you?
He's like, we're gonna give you the radar gun. We're gonna give you the radar gun to play
like
with.
His gold-plated radar gun he gets to take out every year.
Randy, we know we don't let you actually have a real gun. But today we're going to let you play with the radar gun.
And dude, he had that thing dialed in true radar fashion form. You
would have thought he was like an Army Ranger
sniper,
from 2,000 meters trying to take out Bin Laden. He was dialed in with the scope. I think I actually saw a legit laser scope on top of it, trying to get it. But yeah, that was the only.
You were going like 6 miles an hour and hit the brakes.
Yeah, I didn't want a ticket from Natural Resources Radar Randy. I mean, nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
I don't even know if those tickets hold up in court, but yeah, that was the only thing. But overall,
who's going to go fight it?
I wasn't. From Ken's standpoint and the volunteer and Ken, if you're listening, you did a great job. And then I even spoke to the volunteer race director David Buckner afterwards and gave him good reviews. I thought it was very well done. And obviously, if you want to nitpick, you can always nitpick, but I think you should always remember how many moving parts and moving people there are on a race day. It's never going to be perfect, but I like I said, I never found myself not able to get what I wanted in terms of what I expected.
Yeah,
on race day.
As a spectator who was running around all over the place, I talked to a lot of athletes, and same thing. I thought it all ran really smoothly. I didn't get the sense in any form or fashion that the race itself didn't, run like silk.
Yeah.
Smooth as silk.
Yep.
And I just I got to say the one thing that kind of threw me. We heard the podcast, and you can kind of hear it, and you listen to things and know what's going on. And this is just like, I'm always like, for whatever reason, I'm always Mr. like, how can we make this more like WWE or something? You know what I mean? Like, I like to look for like the fun, a lot more fun and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I, for whatever reason, had in my head that because we spent the day before, Friday actually, we were in Delaware. We had a nice lunch downtown, and we thought, man, this is a cool little town. And we were both thinking, man, it's going to be cool to hang out down here and watch you run through downtown. We thought the race was going to loop around the downtown, and in reality, it didn't. So that was a little bit of a bummer for me. And I know that's an expensive play probably, and there's always going to be a safety angle, which I totally get. And I mean, I've been saying this for years about like even races in Chattanooga. It's like, why can't you have a couple blocks incorporated into your race? At least they go through Main Street, and it's kind of like, let's experience the town, because it becomes, let's go race in Delaware, but never really, race in Delaware.
Yeah.
In a way.
And I'm sure, like we talked about before we got on, is that I'm sure there's so many other things that they take into consideration, like exit routes, and if there's an emergency, how they're going to get them to to a hospital or something with certain things closed off. So I get it, but yeah, and I also have to say, and I think you got to mention that with two separate transitions, and then putting your stuff in a bag, in your morning clothes bag, and then it all being delivered to a different location. I thought it went seamlessly. I mean,
for sure.
I mean, as many moving parts, and you're taking gear and goggles and swim skins and caps and everything else that's left over in a bag. I mean, I didn't. All I had was a goggle and cap in mine. But I think when I even went to get it, I think it took me like less than 60 seconds from when I walked up and asked for it to get it back.
Yeah.
I think so. Overall, I thought that was great. I thought it was the run gear situation was great. I actually really enjoyed it, to be honest with you. I think it took a little bit longer, but I think it was nice to not have everything just so spread out and junked. And it was nice to kind of run and look and just look for your bag and your number, and like Ken said on the podcast, being able to just know what yard marker your bag's on, makes it so much easier to find when you're talking about trying to find your bag in a sea of 2,000. It's mine was on the 50-yard line, and so I just knew I had to run to the 50, run down on the right, and then the great thing is those bags are clear, so I just had to run down and keep my head down and look for my shoes, see my green shoes, and know that was my thing, and get back and be done. Yeah. So it was actually a lot easier than I had anticipated. But so again, very
clear bag, man. That's a little secret.
Very well done. Very well done. overall race experience. You obviously were a spectator, so we'll give two totally different views on this, which I think is great, both for the racer and the spectator. Overall race experience, I'm going to give it a flat 4. And again, great execution. And again, and we talked about this like the day before, is how races are like the success of a lot of races are like so dependent on something totally out of the race director's hands. But I give it a solid 4 stars. I thought, again, I think the rolling start, while good, and I totally understand it, I do. I do see and still see the need and the desire to have a separate wave, maybe the competitive, not a competitive wave, but like trying to get on, you want to, you just like to race. I like to know who I'm seeing and who I'm like, what I'm seeing is actually real. Are they passing me because they're passing me, or are they passing me because I'm way ahead of them, or vice versa? So they can't control that. So from that aspect, I know it's uncontrollable, but I still like to see, somebody take that over. The swim is a slow swim. And I think that they'll probably still get, they're probably going to get reviews that say the swim still needs work, but it doesn't. It just is what it is. It's just like, it's probably more.
It's a real swim.
It's a real swim. It's probably much more accurately marked because it's a still body of water. And for some reason, people always tend to think that lakes are fast swims, but they're not. They're the slowest of swims. A, there's no salt water, so you're not buoyant. B, there's zero current that's going to help you. And C, and we talked about this yesterday, is the swim probably isn't really that long. It's at probably every other swim course you do, it's probably short.
Yeah.
And because they're a moving body. I mean, I remember when I looked at chat, first thing I said when I looked at it was like, that's short. I mean, it was a joke. Like, it was probably just a mile. I mean, it was kind of a joke, and it was a little disappointing. I'm sure most people wouldn't care.
Cause Chattanooga, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's the swim up on the map. It looks like 300 meters, and I think I went like 10 strokes and made a turn.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, come on. Like, they already make the swim easy enough. Let's not make it just like embarrassing. And but it's a tough swim. It's a triangle, which isn't the greatest to sight. There was fog, there was sun. It was hard to see some of the buoys. So for me, I swam well, but I would still consider it a tougher swim, not because of the lake, because the lake was perfect and the water temperature actually felt fine to me. I'm kind of surprised it was registered at 79. It didn't feel like 79 to me. But from, the angles and, God bless them, the entire American Kayak Association was out there with a fleet the size of like the USS Ohio. And it was sometimes hard with the fog. I think I went in the water like the first 100 people. It was hard to like discern between who was a kayak and who was a buoy. But again, I thought it was again a tougher swim. If you did notice that the timing mat to come out of the swim was not until you got out of the water and ran up the little part of the beach. That added a little bit of time, but mostly it's the lake, the distance, the angles, and the no wetsuit that made it a slower swim. I thought T1 was great. It was super easy with the bike gear layout. The bike course, hey, it is flat, it is fast, except for those like last 3 miles, which I kind of didn't really anticipate, to be honest. I thought it was very, very safe. Again, we saw lots of Marshals. I thought the only two negatives were I thought the turn in aid station where everybody was required to turn in. The pavement there was just epically terrible. And so I thought that was kind of a bummer, even though you can't change that. That was my only negative about that. The other aid stations were well manned with plenty of volunteers. And again, when you're on the bike, you're going, and it's that flat and that fast. You're never really looking around your surroundings anyway. But there is absolutely nothing to look at on this bike course. But again, it's a PR bike course, so your head should be down, powering away anyway. But I think that that was the only kind of semi-downer, but even really wasn't that big of a downer, because I'd rather be able to go fast than look at the landscape. I thought T2 again went very seamlessly coming in from the bike. It's a longer style transition, but all these big races are. And the volunteers are great on the run. Never wasn't in need. I actually loved the lollipop loop. I thought it made it really easy to kind of break up the race in terms of pacing and where you at, and just kind of break it into segments. Do the stick, do the first loop, and then you're like, what? I'm never going to come back on this road again. And I like that feeling. But I remember thinking at like mile 8 maybe that I have a hard time believing that third best run course in the world. I think I saw maybe like 50 spectators the whole entire run.
Really?
And more than half of those were at the turnaround. It was just, and again, the race director and the race, event management, whatever, like they can't control who comes out and spectates. It's just.
Well, I think it takes time for locals to also to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, but all I heard about from the message boards and everything was how great the spectators were on the run course. And maybe because I've done a lot of 70.3s and I've been in different locations, and maybe my expectations were too high. But I remember thinking, this is it. From a spectator experience, I thought the course was great. The minimal turns, long straightaways, lollipop loop, ups and downs, a little bit of shade, a little bit of not shade. I thought the course itself was great. Maybe that's why they got so many stars. But I heard a lot of hubbub about the spectators and found it a little lacking.
Well,
and I was kind of surprised that it was such a nice day outside that people weren't out there. More people weren't out there, but maybe it was such a nice day that people thought, what, I'm not going to sit here and cheer on these, spandex laden people. I'm gonna head out to the lake and get on the boat.
Yeah. Well, listen, man. If I may still listen from you.
Yeah, listen.
I think in a way, Ironman's between a rock and a hard place on a lot of this stuff, because if you think about it, you hear stuff like that was a hard swim, and we sit here and say that was hard because it was legitimate, And I think a lot of people spend a lot of time in the pool and, with their, tools and their, all these kind of, tricks and what have you. And then they get in open water and actually have to swim, 2,200 yards without lines on the bottom and all this other stuff. And then that makes it hard. They may get a little open water practice, but they're not swimming that kind of like entire shape of a race. So they probably rarely do it, for one. And then you get people who spend a ton of time on the trainer because that's in vogue, and a lot of pros are all about how the trainer makes you go faster and what have you. And then all of a sudden, you throw a tricky, a bike course where you actually have to make turns or go up a few hills or do some kind of handling, and then all of a sudden the bike course sucks, or it's tough. It's really tough. And then the same goes for the run. It's like a lot of people do treadmill running or whatever. They don't do a lot of hill running or whatever the case may be. And, so what my point about Ironman kind of in that rock and hard place is that they're trying to get people to sign up. And anytime they put any kind of like challenge in there, it always gets sort of like this bad reputation, or it's a, whatever. So I got to say, man, it's like, I thought that, that course was from a spectator's perspective, I thought that course seemed very, especially the swim. I looked at that and I knew that it was going to be quote unquote a tough swim just because of how it looked. And, it wasn't Wetsuit. And then, you get all these things. We were talking about this yesterday too, that I think is an interesting point about, they're trying to do the rolling starts and make people feel safe and less anxiety and whatever like that. But they're also making 70. What's at the upper end of again? The Wetsuit optional temp. whatever it is, 79
I'm
or
not
78.
100%. I'm not 100%. I think it's like 80.2 or
Okay, so
something. So
whatever-
it's a huge range. Like 76.1 is the cutoff, and they said it was 79.1 or something on race day.
Okay, so if you're saying to me that whatever it is, say it's 79, I don't know, 80, you're saying that's okay to wear a wetsuit. Why not just make it legal up to that point? If you're saying it's okay for some people to wear it and not others, to me, if you made these races like yesterday, wetsuit legal, that takes 30% of anxiety, the overall anxiety piece of that puzzle. 30 to 40% of it's gone on race day, rather than a rolling start.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got nothing to do with it in my mind. I think people just
I agree.
would prefer to be in the safety of a wetsuit.
Well, most people would.
Yeah.
And I get it. I get that's a struggle for a lot of people, but I'm there with you to the extent that I think it either should be legal or not be legal. I don't think you should have an option. Because I think what you're doing is you're just enabling the continuation of a crutch.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point too.
If you get to the point to where you won't swim and you won't do a race unless it is 100% wetsuit legal, then to me, I think you're just, like I said, enabling bad and very poor judgment and an approach on the athlete side. You're basically saying that's okay because no matter what, we're going to let you. And to the same extent, I think you really put a dent on participation on your events that traditionally aren't going to be wetsuit legal, and not even close. Because you're basically saying, you know that for a certain faction of participants, they're just not going to sign up because they have to do one with wetsuit. Like, it was, and I get it. Some people have an issue with open water, and while I think you're able to address it, some people, I think, were actually like panicking because they weren't allowed to have it, and a lot of times,
that.
I get it. I just think there's definitely, I think there should or shouldn't be. There shouldn't be an in between. And listen, if you're going to allow wetsuits and make a whole separate wave that starts 5 minutes after everybody else is in the water, then why can't you also put a wave that goes 5 minutes ahead of everybody else that is a competition wave?
You're right. Yeah. Back to our point.
But, I get it that, Ironman is not focused on they're focused on the largest portion and, largest group of participants. But,
yeah, you get, I love that,
But, it's like, that's, yeah, anyway, that's a topic for another day.
No, I don't know if it is, man. I like the topic. because I just think it's a really, you're making a really good argument there, because if, it's almost like, yeah, okay, if I would have done, like in retrospect, for example, when I did Ironman Chattanooga and it was wetsuit optional, and even though it's a downstream swim, I was getting blown over by wetsuits, at about midway through that ride, and they were just going over the top of me, and you can't fight. I don't mind contact, but I do mind contact of it's like a whole brigade of wetsuits coming up behind you and just kind of like, middle of the pack type swimmers or whatever, like me, just getting mauled by these guys. And in retrospect, like, I got maybe 30th place or something like that. And if I'm going, well, wait, if the only penalty for me is just not being able to go to Kona and I got to be in the top 2, why the hell wouldn't I wear a wetsuit? Because I'll probably, maybe that'll put me in the top 10. It's actually a reward in a sense, because if I'm, saving 10 minutes on my swim, that might have put me in the top 10.
Yeah.
And I knew I wasn't going to make Kona, but I'll certainly be doing better than 30th or 50th. So I don't know what the answer is as far as, like, if you, put them in red in results and you DNF the swim. I don't know. It's like something not hard, but you know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thing that, as somebody who's a competitor like me, it didn't ever even cross my mind. I'm thinking, well, I want to do this legit and all this stuff, and maybe all of a sudden there's 30 people out of 200 in my age group that are in wetsuits, and all of a sudden 15 of them finish in front of me.
Yep.
because they save 5 to 10 minutes on the swim or whatever. So
Yeah, it's a big animal, and it's always going to be around.
but I like your idea. It's either you're in, or you're out.
You're out.
If you're not going to do it, if
simple.
you haven't, it's like, come on. Then you don't. It's like your point initially is like, because people don't take the swim seriously and they don't train for it because it's the shortest.
And Ironman's making it easier for people not to continue to just turn the swim into a joke.
But to wrap it up, that's the main reason why I liked the swim yesterday, is because it was legitimate.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you need to.
Well, it was the right distance. There was no buoyancy, unless you did what they call the party wave, which. And
as someone who was watching that, that's kind of the reason why I decided not to do the race, because I didn't think my swim was ready. And as a spectator yesterday, that really kicked my ass in gear. It's like, hey, I got to get my swim in, better.
Yep.
And that's the whole point about swim safety, is having people that can swim better.
Yeah.
Because you don't want them dragging you down when they're panicking. Because I read a lot about that. It was like, when people panic, sometimes they just grab other people.
Yeah. Grab the closest thing next to you to keep you afloat.
Right. So, good job on the swim.
Yeah. Like I said, bike is what it is. I thought it was well marked and well done. And I heard at dinner last night of lots of flats. I saw 0. But honestly, if you got flats from hitting potholes or bad spots in the pavement, then you should have been paying more attention, because they were incredibly well marked. I never got snuck up on and there were plenty. On certain segments of the road, there were plenty of bad spots, but they were also really, really well marked.
You should expect it going out, man, and be ready for that.
Easy to avoid. So it's
Tour de France, they
always
ride cobblestones, dude.
Yeah, just make sure
Toughen up.
Make sure. Whoa, man, you're
sorry. I'm just saying, it's like
jaded.
everything isn't going to be like a treadmill or a trainer ride.
Yeah,
it's just if you get used to that kind of stuff, which is fine. I think it's proven that maybe it does create better training, maybe consistent workouts and things like that, and maybe does help your overall whatever. But when you get on a road, it's going to be different. That's just how it is.
Yeah,
it's not going to be
out there.
Perfect blacktop everywhere you ride.
And I thought the run course was great. I don't like totally flat courses. I don't like monstrous hilly courses. It was rolling. There was always kind of a change of pace. Change of your gait, uphill, downhill, flat.
Yeah. So the overall running part of the course,
I thought was
nicely
really
done.
Nicely done, and straightaways, minimal turns, and it was. I thought it was a good mix of shade and no shade, and I think we did get lucky. Like the first loop was quite warm, I felt. And then the breeze came out and it got a little overcast, which I thought was gave a big relief. So overall, I think it was, again, I give it 4 solid stars, which is still a high rating. And I think it'd be interesting to see how the negotiations and talks go for a contract extension.
I thought I read somewhere that they might have got one. 3 years, or I could have been reading.
Well, they did. It was 3 years, but they have one for 3 years. But after this current year is the,
or maybe it's like 3 more years or something.
Maybe they did. But yeah, well done, and congratulations to everybody who went out there and gave it their best yesterday, and lots of PRs I think I saw. So from a lot of people that we know that on our team that raced, and then out there that raced. It was great conditions, great weather. You couldn't have asked for anything better in the end of July in Ohio. Got very, very lucky, which is great for the race itself. People see fast times, people want to go. That's just how it. That's
some nice
how it
times.
goes. Yeah.
Do you want my spectator review? Or did I already give it?
I mean, if it's going to be as like.
I know I've been harsh. Maybe I better.
You're a little harsh. If you're going to continue to be as harsh, maybe another day. But
I'm just talking to the athletes here. I think the race was done very well.
Yeah, but give me a quick spectator review. Maybe a little more leniency.
Yeah, I loved being there.
All right, that was a spectator review.
No, I mean, honestly, and this is, I'm a unique spectator in the sense that I'm trying to run around and get video of everything and put together videos for Crushing Iron at crushingiron.com. And so the idea of being stuck at the swim until 9:30 was a little bit of a bummer for me. And I knew it was coming, but it just sort of, and it's harder for me to video halves because they unfold so quickly in comparison to a full where I have more breathing room and time to think and set up and things like that. So and of course we're always thinking about, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, I think that race was beautiful. I'm always looking for ways like, okay, because like, for example, and I know that they've explored this, so it's probably a dumb thing to even bring up, but I noticed when we were leaving the park, we were in single file and the left lane was really unused. Is there a way to use that left lane for cars to leave and then turn left and go back into Delaware earlier? And then have the bikes just take the right side and turn right when they leave the park? That was the one thought I kept having, because we had to wait till 9:30 to actually leave. And then by the time we even got down to the run course, I barely caught you. So you had already swam, gotten out of the water, done your whole bike, and I almost missed your run out. That's 3 hours from when you entered the water. So that for me was a kind of put me, I felt like, behind the 8 ball, and I knew it was coming. Like I said, it's just when it happens. But otherwise, I mean, to be in that stadium, I got some great shots of people running in the stadium. We had some great access thanks to Ken and David, and they were just unbelievable. I thought the expo was awesome. I thought people enjoyed it. There was a lot of tents and just some solid vendorship. Is that a word?
It should be.
I mean, everything I needed was right there. It was we had a nice little tent set up right down the row from the expo, and it was easy to get in and out and walk around, and that part of the run was awesome. Everyone ran by and come back and stuff like that. I ended up walking out to that turnaround loop, which was quite a ways for me to walk. I mean, I was just tired.
Yeah, I mean, I
it's
think
a cool looking neighborhood out there, man.
it is. I think
maybe if I had a shuttle or something, that would have been outstanding.
Yeah, I think for the most part, pretty good access, but definitely one of those race venues where you kind of have spectator anxiety, trying to get to where you need to and make sure you're there in the morning. And it's just but that's what you're signing up for.
Yeah.
When you do that race, this is the layout that they were able to get. And this is I feel like they do the best with what they have to work with, and that's really all you can ask. I do have to say.
Okay.
My biggest negative.
Wait a minute, man. Can I cheer you up at all? I know I've been going. I'm a little bit feisty. I think it's because of the sleep. And your biggest negative was what?
My biggest negative, without question, was the post-race food.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't be any more disappointed with cheeseburgers and chips.
You know where that comes from? That's athlete feedback, I guarantee it.
Well, the athletes who give that feedback, you guys are terrible. Everybody wants pizza and cookies.
That's the...
Everybody. I didn't talk to a single person who was like, thank God, no pizza, no cookies, no pretzels, no fruit. All I wanted was a 2-centimeter thick burger with cheese, pickles, and some crumbled up Ruffles. When I finished, my first thought was, God, I can't wait to have like some cookies, some pretzels, some salts and sweet stuff, and then some pizza. No. It's like the grill out at your middle school on like field day.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I was not. Yeah, that was my biggest negative. And to be honest with you, I got a lot of affirmation from other athletes and spectators that I talked to who were like, "What do you mean no pizza, no sweets, no cookies?"
Yeah, I don't know. I really do, man. Here's my theory on that. Ooh, it's been a while since I've had a theory. I think, honestly, those I've never, and this is, I don't know why, but, and I'm sure you haven't, filled out an athlete survey. Maybe I've done one or something like that, like the post-race survey. Please take ours. And I think the people who do that don't necessarily. I think they're the ones that just do stuff like surveys. They don't necessarily represent the overall
right. They're
feeling
people
of.
who have like an actual profile and picture on Yelp.
And it's definitely probably their first race.
Right.
So. Right. I think my point is those athlete surveys. I think we need to take those with a grain of salt sometimes. Yeah. And
so if you're out there and you're listening, you direct races: pizza, cookies, fruit.
It's that simple.
And stick with the Coca-Cola.
And it doesn't matter what kind of pizza.
Yeah, seriously. I
mean, Domino's is usually the
whatever.
Filet mignon.
Filet mignon flatbread.
Yeah.
But that's that was my biggest negative.
It's just, I guess that's the point, is it's like there are...
first impression, last impression.
There are simple, things that don't need to change, that are just working. And pizza, cookies does it.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Mass starts is another undebatable.
Trying to reinvent the wheel with burgers and veggie burgers.
Can we just...
Come on.
Stick with what works. I mean, I think the first original Kona was a mass start, wasn't it?
You think? There was like 15 people there.
I know, but
Bet you they had pizza and cookies though at the end.
Damn straight they did.
Other than that, pretty solid. But again, it's all about the first impression and last impression. And my last impression was a mediocre burger. But thank you. A big shout out to Sharon Cardona, who offered me double stuffed Oreos.
That was nice of her.
At the end. And as we discussed very briefly, that really is truly the only kind of Oreo. The double stuffed Oreo. People who get regular Oreos are the same people who probably drink Corona Light.
Wow, man. That's old school. That's tradition.
That's not tradition.
The regular Oreo is the mass start of triathlon. You're just...
The double stuff is the rolling.
But, and I'm just saying, like, as a spectator, I'm really thinking about doing this race next year, though. So that's the real endorsement. Because I'm a critic on that kind of stuff. And
I know you are.
I'm very curious about doing that race because it was, like I said, it seemed really legit to me.
Yeah. A lot of legitness.
I mean, it was a very fast ride, obviously. I didn't see any part of the bike course, so I have no idea. I saw the run course, and I honestly, going in, thought it was just going to be a piece of cake run, but I think just even walking parts of it, I was like, this is not...
definitely not piece of cake.
Nancy Sally stuff.
Yeah, but not really hard. So overall, 4+ stars average for the whole experience, which is good. Which is really good. So
especially coming from us.
Yeah, because we can be a little harsh, but overall great experience. And again, congrats to everyone who finished. We'll end this fourth edition of the Crushing Iron Carcast with a short story.
As we roll into Cincinnati.
Yeah. So.
Oh man, you got to tell the story.
I am. We're going to title this story number 1308. So Friday night, we're at our carb load. We do our carb load on Friday night, not Saturday night, because that's what we're supposed to do. And we're at Marcella's.
Always coaching.
Yeah, always coaching. And I'm only going to use first names here. I'm not going to exploit or alienate the parties by doing the last name. So I'll just use first names. So we're at dinner and we have two wonderful ladies with us that we know that are one's on our team and one is visiting in the recruit stage, and they're named Katie and Sarah, and they're from the East Coast, and they had a 9-hour car ride. And apparently on these 9-hour car rides, what you do is if you're single looking to mingle, you search on the Iron Tracker for a city, and they're from, let's just say they're from Richmond,
Okay.
Virginia. We'll go with that. So they search Richmond and they look down, and usually it pulls up a list of everybody from that race that's from Richmond.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then I think Katie and Sarah both in their 30s.
Sure.
And so they're looking for dudes also in their 30s.
Sure.
From
Makes
the same
sense.
town.
I get that.
Racing, they have similar likes, obviously. So, I mean, I can see where that would be exciting. Maybe you find a cute guy that's from your part of, from your city that's racing, and you talk, and next thing you know, sparks fly.
Yeah. Or at least you get to work out together,
Yeah. And honestly, until Mike and I can get our web developer and app developers to speed up the process of our new app called TriTender, this is probably the best route that people are going to have, is doing their own search engine. So they find athlete. We'll call him Eric B. Number 1308, bib number 1308, and we talk about him, unbeknownst to him, obviously, for a good portion of the Friday night dinner.
Just having fun.
Just having fun. And I'm bib number 1319, and so I know that, he's going to be on my rack. And I was, making a joke. I was like, hey, I'm gonna be on the lookout for this 1308 guy, and and if he's on the rack, and and our eyes connect, I'll just walk up to him like, hey, man, you single? And
which is not creepy at all.
Which wouldn't be creepy at all.
Especially the morning of a race.
Probably ask him while I'm applying chamois cream. So I checked my bike in on Saturday, and I went down and made sure I saw where his rack was, and I stuck a little pink heart sticker where he was going to rack his bike, just kind of throw it out there, try to hook up Katie and Sarah with this nice young, hopefully available chap.
Both of them.
1308. Well, either one. They can fight over him.
Yeah.
So then we get together for our team dinner. There's 30 of us Saturday night. And a bunch of our athletes come, obviously, and spouses and boyfriends, girlfriends, kids, all kinds. And I'm sitting next to an athlete that I coach, Amanda, who I haven't met before. They're in Cincinnati, and she brings her lovely husband. Introduces him, and we're chit-chatting, and he was like, oh yeah, he's 35, he's 35, 39. And I was like, oh great, Eric, that's great. What's you should be on my rack probably. I'm 1319. What number are you? And he says 1308. And the look in my face was that of incredible coincidence, awkwardness, and just total shock. And
oh, jeez,
I remember saying, "Excuse me, can you 1308?" And I almost said, like, "Nah, you can't be 1308. That's." No. And then I put together, his name's Eric, and Amanda's last name is Ball. And sitting right in front of me on the other side of the table was this other girl, Katie, who was the one on the lookout for 1308. So we have the stalker trying to find, 1308. And at our table we have 1308, who's married to one of our athletes.
It was an incredible
story of coincidence, awkwardness, the inappropriateness of being a stalker, and also the inaccuracies of the Iron Track, because apparently he's from New Richmond.
Yeah.
Not.
Yeah. Well, they just
Richmond.
Overlooked that part.
Yeah, in their dire need and zeal to find an eligible bachelor at this race, they overlooked the New.
Yeah.
But hey,
there's nothing new about the old Richmond.
Any Richmond, really. But
oh, come on. I like Richmond.
An incredibly coincidental story that was was just great fun, and something that we had a lot of fun talking about, and you will too. So that is the story. That is number 1308. Eric Ball, if you're listening, thanks for being such a good sport. And Amanda Ball, thank you so much for being awesome and not making that situation more awkward than it already was.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a really innocent situation, but
Yeah,
it
it really
was
was.
It was very.
Yeah. It was outstanding.
I didn't even.
It was outstanding, but yeah. Yeah, it's probably not nearly as funny as you're listening, but you can imagine just being there. Yeah, that is it. That's our wrap of the Ohio 70.3 Race Cap Review segment and the short story that is 1308. We appreciate you listening. Again, if you we come to you every Monday and Thursday. We have, which will be 2 years in October. Please subscribe and download and give us a listen on iTunes. Let us know what your thoughts are. Give us some reviews. We're very much appreciative of those. If you want to visit our website for more information on all the things that we do, race videos, blogs, coaching, training plans, triathlon camps, swim analysis, gear, you name it, it's all on the one-stop shop that is crushingiron.com. So visit that, check it out, and then if you want to, especially if you really like the podcast or even just the videos that Mike puts out of these races, please go to the pledge button and throw a little bit of coin our way. Our podcast is free. We don't have sponsors yet. AutoWares, John Sanford. But help us out. It takes a lot of time and stuff for us to do those. So, but we appreciate it, and we'll come back to you on Thursday.
Yeah, one more thing about coaching, if I may, because you're the coach. You're coaching some awesome athletes, super people, hard workers that are very focused. But there's a lot of big races still coming up, big full Ironman races, and if you're out there and you feel like you're maybe in a confusing place with a couple months left or 3 months left or whatever it comes down to, this is, there's a good opportunity there to bring a coach on to gear you through that race. It's a good time to kind of get dialed in and make sure you're doing the right stuff in the next 2-3 months to have your best Ironman possible, because these are the times when, especially if you're self-coached, where you can start kind of losing your way a little bit and getting confused and not trusting in what you're doing and stuff like that. And it's really nice to have a third eye or second eye, third or fourth eye on what's going on with your racing. If you're struggling, if things don't seem like they're working like they should, or you had high aspirations and now you feel like you're going backwards, whatever the case is, it's I really do recommend that that last 2-3 months of focus and help with a coach. I think it's invaluable. That's usually what I do. I start leaning on him the last 2 months, and he makes sure I get focused, and it's really worked out well. So that's there. Check out our coaching page. Get a hold of Robbie at c26coach@gmail.com. You can always find me, Mike, at crushingiron@gmail.com, and we're heading back to Nashville to
get back to work.
I've got Louisville coming up in October, and it's time to focus.
Yep.
So thanks for listening to the Crushing Iron podcast. Thanks for hanging out and saying hi in Ohio. We had a great time, and we'll likely be back next year on some level.
Yeah, can I just say, before we close, say that we definitely met quite a few people, and then we had a nice experience at breakfast at First Watch, where we had a podcast listener sitting beside us at breakfast who apparently said she was too intimidated to talk to us. So I went to the car and got her one of our hats out of the car and gave her a free hat. But we are just two dudes with a borderline mediocre podcast.
Yeah.
So please come talk to us. We love meeting we love meeting our listeners, all 9 of you. And if you could come by and say hi, I promise we're just normal dudes with a slightly above average podcast on most days.
Exactly right. Love meeting the people out on the course. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for saying hi, and
safe travels back, and we'll come back to you again on Thursday.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.